gravel mining. They do barge hauling. They have a huge quarry in San Rafael, which is their base location, where they've been producing rock and concrete and aggregate for the North Bay. They own, it's a privately owned company. They are one of the largest tug fleets, dredging fleets rather, on the West Coast. They operate on both coasts, but with a fairly spotty, if not miserable, track record in terms of environmental and employee relationships. And for whatever reason, they decided that they were going to build an asphalt plant to serve the North Bay at the entrance to Petaluma. And so in 2004, they started their application process with Sonoma County. It is outside the city limit. And so it's outside of the city's control. And so it's entirely under the county's jurisdiction. They managed to change some zoning to allow them to do an industrial site on some land that was part of the dairy belt agricultural zoning. And they progressed ahead. Probably in about 2005 or 6, David Yearsley noted that this was on the boards and asked me to come to a meeting at the county. And that was my introduction to what was happening with Dutra. So it's been quite a while. We have very strongly opposed the reindustrialization of this north end of Petaluma Marsh. And I'm sure you're all quite aware of the value and importance of the Petaluma Marsh as the largest remaining relatively intact high elevation, meaning Salicornia wetlands on the coast, on the Pacific coast of the lower 48. So it's actually a national treasure. Originally it was maybe 10,000 acres. It's been diked and filled down to about 6,000 acres. And slowly we're seeing restoration efforts to bring it back. But for a long time, this was an industrial end of the Petaluma River with essentially flat water access to the bay. And the county board of supervisors in a 3-2 vote decided, sure, we'll keep going. Let's just reindustrialize it. Petaluma gets very little recognition. Petaluma River gets very little recognition. The marsh gets very little recognition from the 5-member board of soups. We only have one representative on that board, who is currently David Rabbit. And mostly they don't care. This is out of sight, out of mind for the county board of soups. And as we go through, you'll see that the politics of Sonoma County is really what hurt us a lot. It's a long history of thinking that in a Santa Rosa centric board of supervisors, that Petaluma is just really an adjunct to Marin County and really represents Bay Area values, but they represent the true Sonoma County values of, it used to be the Redwood Empire, now it's the Wine Empire. And so the issues that we raised, the issues that many other people raised at the county, just didn't make much difference to the majority of the soups. Very frustrating, very damaging, as the city has spent millions of dollars to bring back Shollenberger or create Shollenberger and the Ellis Creek and the Ullman Marsh with all of the environmental values there. The county said, go ahead and industrialize it. Joan, you want to pick up?
Yeah, I just wanted to add that I got involved in December 2008. We went to a Christmas party at Andrew Packard's house, and you told me that the final vote to approve this industrial operation on the banks of the Petaluma was about to take place. It was December 2008. And I said, why would anyone want an asphalt factory next to like our park, our wonderful Shollenberger, where we love to walk, exercise, view the birds? and he said that it's just been under the radar. There's been 2 small articles about it in the newspaper. Nobody knows, nobody cares. And I said, that's because nobody knows about it. And so we started a massive information campaign, old style, which included a bridge table in front of the tea cafe with information about what was about to go down. And what happened was the community rose up. We were able to deliver over 3,000 signed petitions saying, not our park, not our river, no. And that was the beginning of this movement to preserve and protect Shollenberger from one of the most polluting industrial operations you can have right after, what do they call it? Refineries are like #1, and then tanneries, who has that anymore, but that's #2, and asphalt factories. So, you know, what's been remarkable about this community effort to preserve and protect Shollenberger is that it has endured over all these years. And why has it endured? And it's a testament to how well-loved Shollenberger Park is, and also that it's a combination of all sorts of people. This is not just one type of person, old, young, you know, rich, poor, bird watchers, karate players. You know, everyone values Shollenberger for their different reasons. And so we have been able to endure, we've been able to raise the money, we've been able to mount 2 legal challenges and pay the legal bills. And we are still here, and we have lost. We lost at the Board of Supervisors 3-2. We lost in Superior Court. We lost the appeal. And yet everyone says, well, you lost, right? And I say, no, we won. Do you see an asphalt factory there? So our strategy has always been delay, and Dutra's strategy has always been outlast them. So, you know, usually people age out from a struggle. You know, they just get tired, they move, they retire. But, you know, so our hope is to keep this going and to attract, you know, all the new people who've come to Petaluma who know nothing about this, and, you know, how to continue the story. And, you know, people have moved here because they value what Shollenberger has to offer and everything else that is healthy living in Petaluma. So that's my spiel.
Let me add here from the Petaluma Wetlands Alliance. We help maintain with the city the Shollenberger Park and Almond Marsh. Also, we do a lot of bird surveys out there. We have bird research going on. We have education programs going on out there. We do restoration work. We've repainted the benches, the kiosks. We're filling the kiosks with more information. If you notice, there's a couple new posters. We have a biologist producing posters for us now. They're going out there, and it's a hotbed of people all the time. There's 300 to 400 people every day walking out there, or running or biking. But this is just a tip, because it's actually an industrial waste site. It used to be, one part was a dump at one time. Another part was a farm that didn't quite maintain itself. Let the dikes break down, and water came in. And then another part is the dredge spoils area, which is a waste industrial spot. And yet all the birds are there. So we have 230 species of birds that have shown up and have been recorded through our surveys, which we do monthly out there over the last over 10 years now, which we have data on, which shows you how active. And this isn't even the pristine part. This is the humanized, human engineered, human diked, and industrial waste site. And we still have 230 species of birds showing up. And yet we have this Petaluma Marsh right next to us, right across the river and south of us. That is phenomenal. And so I think David and Joan, if you could also speak a little bit about the hazards and things that you can see coming to both not only Shollenberger Park, but also to the marsh. So I'll let you take it over from at this point.
And I just want to acknowledge that the Shollenberger Park is the most heavily used of any of Petaluma's parks. What is it, 100,000 folks, visitor days?
150.
150.
I mean, have they done a survey lately of how many people
don't
use
know.
the park? You know, before COVID?
I don't know. It,
I
it
know.
was, I know,
A
John, if
lot
you,
of people. The
a lot
most
of people.
popular park in Petaluma and the most accessible. You know, it's free, it's flat, it's used by people with health issues, you know, for running. Every benefit that involves a run or a walk, like Alzheimer's Society, etc., Asthma Society, they always want to be at Schollenberger. Like, imagine that happening with an asphalt factory and is it 250,000 diesel trucks that are permitted to
that, yeah.
enter? You
So
know,
let's,
because let's
yeah.
talk about the impacts of asphalt and diesel exhaust.
Okay, let's take a look. Actually, John, if you could put up slide number 4, which is the wetlands, the last delineation of wetlands on the site. It's number 4 would be,
I'm moving it over. That's 1,
okay,
2. This should be number 3,
that's 3.
and this should be number 4.
Bingo. Okay, so this is essentially pre-construction, pre-grading. This was a map that was provided by Dutra's consultants to the Corps of Engineers when they delineated the wetlands on the site. So orientation to the upper left, you see that red and green crosshatched area. That's a little creek that comes through Dutra's waterfront property. Almost directly across the river from that is the deck at Schollenberger over the river. And so everything in the yellow boundary is the property that Dutra has proposed for their asphalt factory. The buildings on the riverside and underneath the Corps of Engineers logo, those were Mr. Yee's and Mr. Fontez's buildings and boats and cars, and all of that has been flattened and removed. But you can see the red crosshatched area is a little creek that drains from the east side of the freeway and comes out there, goes under the Hall Road in a culvert. Pretty much the railroad tracks now go all the ways across the horizontal on that. And then on the next to the freeway, the portion to the left is the hillside where there was the historic haunted, supposedly, house that was mysteriously burned not long after Dutra purchased the property because it was in the way of what they needed. And then it levels off to the 2 areas to the right and lower right. Those are reclaimed sediment ponds. And that was where most of the existing delineated wetlands are in the green and the yellow. So now we can go to slide number 1.
4, 3, 2, and this should be
Bingo.
okay.
So this is close to what was approved by the Board of Supervisors. And so this shows a new freeway interchange and the overpass. And if anyone was here before that was constructed, you know that that was where the egret and heron rookery was, and the eucalyptus trees that were so conveniently removed by Caltrans. They happen to also be in the way and problematic for Dutra because of the nesting and birds and the rookery. And Dutra didn't quite know what to do with it, and Caltrans conveniently solved that problem for him by cutting all the trees.
At night.
At night, right. So what you see here is the gray ponds to the lower right were going to be their both an area that they were going to reshape and recontour and take a good deal of that material and use it to fill the dark gray area where the plant is to the left. And then the middle dark area was going to be used as a pond for runoff. So they were going to reshape it. Go ahead.
Let's interject that. So this was the original and FEIR approved plan. And we did appeal. We lost in Superior Court suing for an inadequate FEIR. Then we appealed because, and we thought we were going to win because the general plan states, the county plan, that there should be no industrial operations approved in the 100-year floodplain. And so the factory buildings per se are located in the 100-year floodplain. So what Dutra then cleverly maintained at the appeals court is that they were going to cut and fill. So they would cut from the lower, the light gray, and fill the footprint of the factory and raise it above the level of the 100-year floodplain. And therefore it was no longer in a 100-year floodplain. So one way to solve, prohibitions against building in the 100-year floodplain was to create this raised footprint, which then was never put into case law, even though this was the decision, because it would be a terrible precedent. You could just, everywhere, you could go around citing this case and build industrial operations in the 100-year floodplain. So that's that.
Yep. Another piece that they maintained in order to get the zoning changed. If you look at the left-hand side of that drawing, you'll see that black line, fat black line going across the railroad tracks. That's the conveyor belt. And the parcel that is partially grayed out on the riverfront is originally was going to be their unloading dock.
That's the side here.
Nope, a little bit further to the left, the one with the gray and that one. That was originally proposed by Dutra to be their unloading dock, and they were going to build their facility and conveyor belt from that parcel. However, it turned out that there are two 12-inch diameter high pressure natural gas lines owned and operated by PG&E that cross the river right there, that are well marked. If you're on Shollenberger, you can see two 4 by 8 foot signs. They've been replaced and are a lot brighter now. And there's also a pair of 4 by 8 signs on the Shollenberger sign in front of where the path goes right next to the gas valves. That's a river crossing. That gas line goes up to, I believe, serves Northern California all the way up to Ukiah.
And David, what does the sign say?
The sign says gas line, high pressure gas lines, no mooring, no anchoring, no dredging.
Yet the planning department at the county approved these plans.
And conveniently, Dutra, using a very prominent surveying and engineering firm in the county, submitted drawings to the county that somehow moved that pair of 12-inch gas lines further north, further to the left, and put them on Shamrock's property, or depicted them on Shamrock's property. At some point with the Coast Guard, we were going down the river and discovered that, and said back to the county, Dutra has lied about where these two 12-inch gas pipelines are. And the county basically didn't care a whole lot. We had to get the Coast Guard to send a letter to the county saying no construction on that site. And yet Dutra had fully submitted their plans to build a dock there right on top of where the gas lines actually are. The other thing they did is try to figure out how they were going to get their barges and tugs moored in front of that dock. And the only way they could do that, the dotted lines, well, it's hard to see in this drawing. And the river channel is 100-foot wide, 8-foot deep dredged channel. And you can't moor boats within the confines, within the limits of that 100-foot wide navigational channel. That's a federal channel. So what did Dutra do with their engineers? They went, oh, look, if we moor our barges there and our tugs, they're going to interfere with the navigational channel. So on the map that they provided to the county, they moved that channel further to the east and actually had it crossing through the location of the observation platform at Shollenberger. Again, we had to point that out to the county, who had not done their due diligence, really didn't care. And so Dutra, in order to be a water dependent facility, which they needed in order to change the zoning on that parcel to industrial, they claimed that they were going to be able to unload their gravel, all of their aggregate at Shamrock's electric crane, the one that you can see from
That's it.
Shollenberger, that usually has barges in front of it and huge stacks of gravel and aggregate behind it.
We have to go a little bit more in depth here because, you know, you never underestimate your opponent because Dutra has been extremely clever. So how are they buy these 39 acres? How are they going to get them rezoned so they can build an industrial thing? It's not zoned for that. It's zoned for agricultural, dairy belt. And the general plan says you can only rezone to a lesser intense use, not a more intense use. So what do? They go to a different paragraph in the general plan that says, goal is to keep the Petaluma a working river. So they propose, look at this wonderful opportunity. We're going to bring more tonnage to the river. We're going to bring in all our aggregate by tug pulling barges. So they need the river delivery of aggregate to get the rezoning. They get the rezoning, and then, of course, they don't really have a dock. So then they have to go, caught in their lie, they have to go try to get Shamrock to agree to let them use their dock. And Shamrock goes to court and says, when we were involved in this Superior Court lawsuit, and says, we don't want to have any part of this. And, you know, don't bring us into it. And don't use any of our permitted tonnage for you, don't think we're going to give it to Dutra. Despite this, despite our attorney saying to the judge, well, what if they don't get the use of this dock? Are you going to get the county to shut down the operation? Should this factory be operating? And the judge basically said, well, that's up to the county. So, we know that the most crucial thing for us is to never let Dutra build this plant, because once the factory's up and running, we'll never get rid of them. Okay, David.
Yeah, and because there was no clear agreement from Shamrock, that Shamrock was going to allow Dutra to unload Dutra's material with Shamrock's crane and use their parcel to move the aggregate over to Dutra, that kind of diagonal black line coming in from the left. That's a conveyor belt that goes across, that goes over the tracks and to Dutra's plant. Essentially, the county said, okay, you have 3 years where you can deliver all of your rock by truck, all of it by diesel truck. And then by then you have to have, at the end of 3 years, you have to have water access. So let's move to slide number 2. So this is what essentially what the Dutra had early proposed to the county and was approved. Here's a modification. This one is from 2017, where they said, well, okay, so maybe we're not going to do so much moving of stuff around in the wetlands to the right. And on the prior map, you saw a whole bunch of circles in that kind of central pattern. Those are piles of rock. So they would have it in piles. They'd be 15, 20 feet tall, sorted by size, and that would go into the asphalt plant. And so this is essentially what got through the courts, what they call the reduced fill alternative. We're not going to move as much dirt around. We're not going to dig up as much in the wetlands. Throughout the entire environmental review, we were looking at larger impacts, not just on this site, not just the danger to employees and to the riverbank per se, but asphalt plants are one of the most polluting industrial activities you can get. The smell of asphalt, the black smoke, are polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons. They're carcinogenic on your skin. They settle out with particulate matter coming out of the plant. Early on, Dutra actually invited myself and two other people to go take a look at what they were proposing to be a clean asphalt plant, meaning in a totally enclosed one. So David Usually, myself, and Mike Orton were invited to meet down in Southern California at an asphalt plant that they said was a model as a closed plant, as in a totally enclosed plant. And that it wouldn't have any smell, it wouldn't have any particulate coming out, it was enclosed, and air was running through filters. And so we get down to the airport in Orange County. This is not a plant owned by Dutra. We drive up there and we get out of the car and it stinks. It is total asphalt smell. We spend a couple hours there getting a tour from the owners of that plant. Their doors that were supposed to be closed in the loading area, one of them was broken, so they didn't use them. When the trucks came in, essentially the driver sat in the truck cab and this mound of hot asphalt was dropped into their truck, producing a huge amount of smoke billowing out of the tunnel of where it's loaded. And then as the trucks left, they were supposed to be tarped, but they just left. None of the trucks that we saw were tarped, and they left this huge trail of blue-gray smoke all the way down the county road. This is in Orange County. And the owner of that plant, who was very nice, said, well, you know, they're supposed to tarp, but we don't stand on top of them. And the door got hit by a truck maybe 6 or 12 months ago, and we haven't gotten around to fixing it yet, so we can't close it. And all of this so-called sealed, closed, filtered, clean asphalt plant was in fact a mess. And there was Dutra family taking us on this tour, and they kind of choked. And that was one of the things that we came to realize. This is an extraordinarily polluting activity. Even when they say the air is going to be filtered, the doors are going to be closed, the loading area is going to be enclosed, that just isn't so. So which way do the winds blow? In the afternoon, they're blowing directly downriver and towards Shollenberger. And that pollution can be measured, what, John, half mile or more?
Well, you know, the EPA recommendation for asphalt factories is that they should be no closer than 3 miles to schools, hospitals, and homes. 3 miles. So the location of this is why our motto has been wrong plant, wrong place. It's completely inappropriate to plunk an asphalt factory this close to all these homes and, you know, Kaiser and their schools. It's a polluting and it's an unhealthy, it's a health risk. So, which is just the byproducts of asphalt. We're not even talking about the hundreds of thousands of diesel truck trips, you know, that diesel exhaust is documented to impact, you know, people's health. There's an increase in cancer, heart attack, stroke. Did I say asthma, which is a major problem for children in Sonoma County. So it's really a health risk, and not to mention the impact on wildlife. And we all love our birds. The fact that asphalt factories, when filling, you know, governmental contracts, they are permitted to operate 24 hours a day. So there are major lighting, you know, which can disrupt wildlife as well. Not to mention the noise. So, you know, just wrong plant, wrong place.
Yep. And the noise, by the way, at one of the county planning commission meetings, we determined that the noise levels at 100 feet or so from the plant were in the 90 to 110 decibel range. And so I brought a vacuum cleaner with me, which was about that.
I forgot that.
An old vacuum cleaner was about that level of noise. And at some point in the hearing at the planning commission, I turned on the vacuum cleaner. Needless to say, the chair of the planning commission threatened to call the sheriff and have me taken away. But they didn't care. The noise level at Shollenberger will be high. The lights, the traffic, the diesel fumes, the asphalt fumes, all of this directly impacts Shollenberger, directly impacts the businesses across the other side of Shollenberger, as well as the homes, and needless to say, all the visitors and all the wildlife, not only at Shollenberger, but in the river, because a lot of this stuff settles out as particulate. We even went into what happens in asphalt plant fires, and you can easily Google what an asphalt plant fire looks like. They generally are allowed to burn out because it's hard for them to pour enough foam on an asphalt plant if one of the tanks or an overflow catches fire. They're supposed to be contained if any of their tanks of hot asphalt rupture. And theoretically, the banks of a little berm around the location of any of these oil and asphalt tanks are sufficient to contain. But if there is spillage into the Petaluma Marsh, it's going to be there for a long time. It's a problem. Let's go to the next slide, number 3.
Now, David,
Yeah,
can you talk a little bit
asphalt-
about the changes that and land that's been purchased and
Yep.
cleaned up over here?
Yeah.
And then also, you mentioned wildlife and immediately Schollenberger, but I think we all love Schollenberger, but this 5,000 acre marsh just south of us is even more of a concern for me than Schollenberger. Schollenberger is actually an industrial waste site officially,
Right.
but we have a 5,000 actually wildlands and wetlands that are officially registered down there.
Yep.
So what are the actual impacts? How far reaching is all of this asphalt, the smells and the aromas? How far will that actually affect the birds, and wildlife?
When we, over the course of these various lawsuits and also a big informational meeting that was hosted by the Petaluma Health District, we hired an environmental consultant on air quality, and I rode around Schollenberger with him on bikes, and we looked towards the new subdivisions, which were in, the northwest direction. And I said, well, the prevailing winds go the other way. He said, I never saw a wind that didn't turn. And in fact, the wind does blow towards the golf course and the homes in the morning. And I said, oh, that's terrible. And then he said, yeah, and asphalt production byproduct is heavy metals. And he said the heavy metals are not water soluble. So he said they will blow on the air towards Schollenberger. And he said, and you might extrapolate, be carried on the water towards these marshes you're referencing, John. He said, in 5 years, there won't be an organic tomato in Petaluma. And I thought, oh my God. He said, because this is going to pollute the soil. It's cumulative. And that's one of the things we're going to bring up, is that even though the project was, scrutinized under the, EIR and all that, they never looked at cumulative impacts on the health of the town, cumulative impacts on the soil, on the wetlands.
Yeah, we had National Marine Fisheries Service, we had EPA, Marina Audubon, Barbara Salzman, Peter Bay consulted for us on the biologic and particularly on the wetlands, and Petra Plus consulted with us on noise issues. So we had a number of consultants that worked with our attorneys. Lozo Drury is the firm, Mike Lozo, Richard Drury. And all of that meant nothing to the courts. All of that meant nothing to the Corps of Engineers. This is, and I want to just focus for a second on this photo, this overhead. And this will give you a little better sense about where things are going to be located under their current, what they call a reduced footprint proposal. the prior proposal went to the Corps of Engineers for the water quality permits, 404 permits, Section 10 navigation permits. The Corps of Engineers sent the proposal to the San Francisco Bay Regional Water Quality Control Board for water quality certification. And staff there kept kicking it back to Dutra saying, no, you haven't shown two things that are really important to us. One is asphalt production is not water dependent. Where's your alternative sites? Because if you look at asphalt plant production around the central northern California, very little of it is located along any water course.
Well, actually, there were 24, I believe it was 24 asphalt factories in the sort of Bay Area, Northern California, and only one of them was located on the water, which was Dutra's other little one down at McNear. And they said, they're all economically viable, so don't cry me a river that you can't be economically viable unless you're on a river. So show us your alternative sites not on a river. And they refused to do that.
Right. So the regional board kept sent back 2 letters saying, your application is incomplete for your water quality certification. And then the other thing they said, so you're not water dependent, you don't need to be here, and you have not shown us what's called the least environmentally damaging project alternative. And that was another part of the requirement on federal permitting. And basically Dutra just strung this out year after year. I think they were in front of the regional board for 4 or 5 years. And finally, the regional board gave a formal rejection to the proposal, which was the prior slide you saw. So Dutra came back, and after another 1.5 years or 2 years, they came back and said, well, okay, we're not going to do any of that work in the wetlands. We're not going to dredge and recontour the wetlands. We're not going to have anything on the river. And we're going to have all of our aggregate coming in by boat to Shamrock's electric crane and dock. So that's up at the upper left location there. That's the gray area is Shamrock's operation. And they were going to have it unloaded by Dutra's electric crane, run to the stacks of aggregate around that location. And then they were going to have skip loaders, front loaders, move the material from those stacks to the hopper, kind of left center, that's shown in red, with this diesel equipment moving the material, however many hundreds of thousands of tons of material, moved to a hopper that is owned by Dutra that would go across that red conveyor belt across the tracks and then be deposited in Dutra's stacks. So that was what they now call their reduced proposal. This was submitted to the county on December 31st, 2019. There was...
And very cleverly, therefore, it didn't impact enough acreage of wetlands to require Clean Water Act scrutiny by the Army Corps or by the Regional Water Quality Control Board. So Dutra was able to get a letter from them saying no longer needed the 404. Never underestimate your opponent.
Yep. In the meantime, while they were at the Corps of Engineers, we accidentally found out that they had contracted with Smart to buy a switch from the railroad tracks to go to a tail track on their property so they could bring in material by rail. 2 things that was a problem for them when we found out about it. One, the county board of supervisors had expressly said you cannot deliver material by rail to this site. And the other is, in order to put the switch on the track to be able to get to those stacks of aggregate and unload there, you see we're all the way over to the right where it says Smart. They were going to put a switch there that would have gone through that little slice of yellow and green wetlands. And they did not reveal that to the county, didn't reveal it to the Corps of Engineers, didn't reveal it to the Regional Water Quality Control Board. We nailed them because we happened to find the contracts just looking through Smart's paperwork. And once again, they lied. And they have professional engineering firm who's happy to lie. And it's really disturbing. So they came back with this reduced plan that says that they don't impact enough acreages, wetlands acreages, Joan says, for them to require a permit. And then starting in the last fall, Dutra bought the 2 properties on the waterfront, Mr. Yi and Mr. Fontes, and all of that was in violation and had been in violation of county building permits for a number of years. And apparently the deal was Dutra said to the property owners, we'll buy these, we'll pay you maybe a nominal amount, but we'll take care of cleaning up all of the stuff that's in violation of county building ordinances. So that's why you saw that entire area be totally cleared last fall and winter, with the exception of one remaining small concrete building that was on the Fontes property. You probably last fall or winter, early winter, you saw a bunch of work being done on the riverfront that was on Harvey Goldberg's property. That was actually PG&E who replaced valves and pipeline segments. And there's another pair of gas pipelines that go across the river there. So that was actually PG&E's work. It has taken 3 Public Records Act requests and insistence with the county that they cough up documents. They have been very reticent to do that. They have an application received for a grading permit from Dutra. Now we're bringing ourselves up to date.
Yeah, they maintain that they have met all the conditions of the FEIR.
Yep, and all the conditions of their the conditions of approval from the county. And we sent a very strong letter in January last year saying, no, you haven't complied with A, B, C, D, and E. And you can't issue a permit, a grading permit, which would be the first step. Basically, you haven't answered our concerns about those conditions of approval that seem to be violated, and the fact that the project as reduced in this slide does not match what was approved under CEQA by the county, and it doesn't match what was approved in their conditions of approval.
Okay,
So
David, just as a reminder on time,
yeah,
it's 5 of 8.
good.
Just want to bring in another little tidbit is that PG&E that I know, I've met PG&E over at Shollenberger. Someone was out there taking pictures and doing this. And there's a pipeline. This whole pipeline is going to be redone in sometime in the next 2 to 3 years. And
Yep.
they've been out surveying and doing information surveys on it, trying to gather the information for that job. But this whole pipeline is going to get essentially, they're going to try to replace it, but in a larger line.
Yeah. So that little loop off the trail there near where your arrow is, where there's a couple of valves in there,
Right.
Those are the lines that go directly across the river into the creek area. And those where, yep, and the other pair as well. And that was where Dutra originally said we're going to build our dock, despite the fact that there were 2 high pressure gas lines there.
Okay,
So
can we go for a second and
yeah.
for folks that may want
Okay.
to leave soon to ask some questions?
Absolutely.
Nora, could you open up, take a look at the chat? And I think let's open it up for a few minutes to the audience. And if you want to unmute yourself and ask a verbal question at this point, let's go ahead and do that. Also,
I have a question about David Rabbit. I mean, he should be our representative from, what is his commitment to not stopping this? Why is he not working to keep this?
He was not on the, it's a good question. David was on city council and did vote against, and the city joined us in the lawsuit and the appeal, and that required a vote of city council to do. So David voted in support of that, of the city participating with us as a plaintiff
Right.
in both court proceedings. Let's just say that this area, the last time I talked to David about this, he wasn't very concerned about reindustrialization of the upper end of the Petaluma River. Whether or not he would vote one way or the other, if this ever goes back to the Board of Supervisors, I have no idea. Please ask him.
His statement when he was running for was it supervisor, I guess, was
Mhm.
he opposed it in its current form. So as it changes and morphs, gives him a way to say, well, they've improved it, it's smaller. What they now refer to the plan as the new plan. And so, in one way that's dangerous for them, because if indeed it is a new plan, then it needs to be reviewed under CEQA. If it is just the old plan, but then they always maintain, but it's smaller, so its impact is less. So, we continue to feel that we can fight on to protect the wetlands and the river and the park. And, we are their worst nightmare because we just won't go away.
Now, one of the questions I keep thinking about is where is the asphalt going to get used? We have 3 asphalt plants that seem to be functioning, working fine. They could fill our potholes as needed. We have the capacity up here. However, Marin doesn't seem to have an asphalt plant. My suspicion, even with all the documentation, is the underlying lie is all this asphalt's going to go to Marin County and not to Sonoma County. And it's all a lie that they're producing us for Sonoma because they want to use our land here in Sonoma because Marin won't let them in.
Well, and it's actually, in some ways, it's actually even more deceptive than that. They claimed when they originally came to Sonoma County, they said, we want to do this so we can lower the cost for repaving 101 and lower the cost for, paving whatever streets and highways are in the county. Well, it turns out, and the county said this in their own analysis, we have more than sufficient capacity already permitted and in operation serving the North Bay. We don't need the additional capacity from production at a plant in Petaluma. And all the stuff about lowering costs, contracts are issued on whatever the bid is. And there's some very active and very effective asphalt manufacturers in the county and in the North Bay. One of the arguments from the Board of Soups, Efren Carrillo particularly, was, well, you guys need to have your asphalt and it's time for you guys down there to take your level of pollution, your share. And which is kind of insane for a supervisor to say that to anybody. And one of the things that I think, or I hoped had come up before, never did, and I hope would come up as the county redoes its general plan, is where do you want to locate these noxious and toxic activities? We are going to use asphalt into the future. So county, where are you going to zone land for industrial activities that are noxious and toxic and noisy and polluting? And that's what you should be doing. So it's pre-planned. So it's not left to whatever the whims are of a particular business owner.
We have a question in the chat about that local nearby housing, particularly the new houses that are going to go across from Hopper Street. That's where the a large development is going in. There's several developments going in, as well as right there in the old Granite area. Have they been informed that this asphalt plant may go in and that it may affect their value of life? Is that
not to mention Quarry Heights, which they were selling homes, and it's within a quarter mile of it. And, our question was, are they disclosing to these new homeowners that they may live within a quarter mile of an asphalt factory? Someone asked a question about, or mentioned the idea that hot asphalt, isn't required anymore. Warm asphalt is the norm now. Okay, Bodine, which is up at College Avenue in near Santa Rosa, they're already set up for warm asphalt production. They're ready for that future.
Yeah. Is the Army Corps of Engineer has any role any longer longer, David?
At this point, unless the county decides that Dutra's revised plant layout needs to go back and go through a revised EIR or an addendum to the EIR, and we can find a wetlands link. At this point, the Corps of Engineers and the Regional Water Quality Control Board are out of the picture.
That's unfortunate.
You
Yeah,
know,
it
we
is.
basically feel it's like one of these typical piecemealing things where now they say, well, we're, you know, forget about our lower parcels that are actually wetlands. We just pretend that's not part of it, you know, and then in a few years we'll start hearing they're going to do something there. But, you know, they get approval because they pretend there's not enough wetlands on their site to, you know, require scrutiny.
Didn't
Yeah,
you have some really good admissions by the Army Corps in terms of the compliance question? And
The regional board was actually very good. The staff there was extremely dubious about this proposal. And it wasn't until Dutra came back with their so-called reduced footprint project that they said, no, we're not touching enough wetlands to merit any inclusion or any jurisdiction by the Corps of Engineers or the regional board. One of the questions that remains unanswered is they were going to recontour that property so they could bring, I think it was 400,000 cubic yards of material to fill and raise the footprint of the plant site. And if they're not going to contour where the wetlands are, where are they getting this fill material from? And none of that was accommodated in calculations for diesel truck trips and diesel emissions. So those questions are still on the table.
Right, I think there was that question. I think you may have just answered it. The diesel trucks equal significant carcinogenic risk. Is there a way
Yep.
to raise the issue more strongly of accumulative impacts? The amount of both the noise level of the trucks, the pollution from those trucks, the amount of traveling that they would be doing on our roads and ripping up the roads because truck traffic tends to rip up roads. So is that all part of the proposal and the EIR? Is that all under consideration?
We would, and we actually, in our letter to the county, after we saw the new proposal, we said you guys did not include any analysis of diesel emissions from those truck trips and from wherever the fill is coming from. And so your original EIR is now out of date and it's incomplete. We have no response from the county as to what the county is going to do about it.
See, our suspicion is that this whole delivery of aggregate via barge is just a temporary thing. Their ultimate goal was to bring this stuff in either by truck or train, which we discovered with this sort of, you know, on the quiet plan to have this switch. And, you know, this 3-year temporary truck delivery permission could stretch on and on. So the fact that they have no concrete deal with Shamrock, which is now owned by a publicly traded company called Vulcan, to use that dock, that would make them too vulnerable. You know, this corporation, maybe next year they don't want to let them use their dock. Maybe they never let them use the dock. So we know that basically the whole river access idea, you know, it got them into approval, but it also made them vulnerable. So that's the situation. And we just have to be ready to raise consciousness in the whole community because our community is growing and changing. There's so many new young families here. They all need to know about this. They've moved here because they want to raise their families here and they want to have a healthy place to live and they value the earth. So, you know, how do we communicate this and how do we make sure all the organizations, you know, support this effort to preserve the river and the wetlands instead of degrade it? And so that's why we're so happy to be invited to come here and speak because all of you have at least 10 friends that you can kind of bring this issue back into discussion, people need to know it's not a done deal. We can keep fighting. We can raise consciousness. We can put pressure on David Rabbit. Should we be able to bring this back before the board, we need to rise up once again as a community and say no.
Is
Is there
there,
any positive impact from the recent dredging that would have on any of the arguments?
Other than making it more convenient for them to run larger barges, I'm not aware of others. And actually the larger barge, because the river was so badly silted up, that's one of the reasons that Jericho has moved their main oyster operation to the Sacramento Delta. They just could not get large enough barges up and down the river, or they would have to be partially loaded, so they floated higher. With the dredging of the river, once again, you can go to a 225-foot long or 250-foot long, 50-foot, no, I'm sorry, 80-foot wide, 80-foot wide, something like that, barge, which is a lot of material. And on the one hand, makes it easier to bring material up the river and increase the tonnage on the river. On the other hand, it means when they're being unloaded, they have to compete for space with Shamrock's barges, again, because the barges cannot stay in the navigable channel for any length of time. And I don't know if any of you remember, it was not unusual to see Shamrock stack barges side by side. And the outmost barge would be moored in the navigable channel, which is not legal. And so the question is, between Dutra's barges and Shamrock's barges, where are these extra barges going to go? Because they don't just come up, get unloaded, and then taken away. They can stay here for days.
David, I've heard that that new properties, that they purchased, I guess, 3 properties along that edge, Yee's property there, and even the one further south. And I thought I heard someone say, oh, that's so that they can, because it's a wider area, that's what they're going to build a new dock so they get the barges loaded in there.
We welcome, if that's going to be their proposal, we
hope
welcome
so.
that, because that'll take us all the way back through Secor, the Corps of Engineers, and the regional board, and we'll just start again.
Yes, that will be difficult for them to get approved by the, they will definitely disrupt the river edge there.
I have a concern now that we have a more favorable city council towards environmental issues, whether the Quarry Hill housing development and any other housing developments that are in the city jurisdiction, if they can be approached to have a concern about this.
I think, Joan, you've talked to a number of the folks, both commercial and residential owners and managers, right?
Well, there's the McNear Landing, all those houses, and then there's the Quarry Hill, and and then there is also the Adobe Creek, the houses by the golf course. That HOA had been very supportive and given us money and so forth because of the prevailing winds going that way from the proposed asphalt factory. Those groups, you can approach them through their homeowners associations and try to get them to give you money or come to the meetings. And yeah, they're definitely they are going to be really pissed if an asphalt factory is coming like in their view. So yeah, all of these groups can be approached. And if we have to start rabble rousing, because of COVID, we haven't had our annual fundraiser, the shindig. It's hard to keep a visual profile, but we will rise again. And anybody who wants to send money to Friends of Shollenberger, we need to fill our coffers again. We need to be ready for legal action where we'd like to stay current with our lawyers' bills. They give us a good deal, but it is expensive to fight these things. And that's what Dutra counts on, that they'll just wear you out and use up all your money. But I think they have underestimated Petaluma. Petalumans really care about their natural environment. And just because this used to be an industrial site, and I don't refer to Shollenberger as an industrial waste site, John. I refer to it was an industrial spill site where they dredged and they put the spills there. But I was there when I first came to Petaluma when it was an unofficial dump. So people's, mentality has changed. Like Pamela Torliette told me that, she said, well, the reason the Board of Supervisors, don't care about Petaluma is they're jealous of, this is her words, they're jealous of us. They've always wanted to stick it to us. And, they just don't envision, what we see as our gateway, as a jewel, as this natural resource, they see as a place to stick, polluting operations. And, that vision, it's like, what is your vision of the gateway? And certainly the city council did stand with us, did rally once they heard from thousands of citizens. And so, and Lynn Woolsey has, been a wonderful mentor. And she said, elected people respond to their electors, the electorate. If you rattle their cages, they listen. So, stand ready, because we may have to rise and really make our supervisors hear us again, that this is not what we want at our gateway.
And I would like to just thank, this has been the coalition that has fought Dutra has been the most remarkable coalition I've ever been involved in. So it was Friends of Shollenberger, it's Petaluma River Council, it's Moms for Clean Air, it's Friends of Petaluma, or Petaluma Tomorrow rather, and there's been another host of individuals and other organizations who have been not plaintiffs, but have been extremely supportive all the way along. And it goes from homeowners to business owners to commercial developers, to bird watchers, to people who row on the river, all across any classification you might want to put on who lives and works in Petaluma. It's a remarkable coalition. And it's a treasure. It's part of our community treasure, and we will beat this. It's going to take a lot more money and hopefully not a lot more time. But again, Dutra is a very wealthy private company, and they don't worry about money.
I have a question, just because you have gotten this audience to be really sympathetic to what's going on. And I know that we can give you some money, but it feels like I want to write letters or do something. Can you help direct us to some kind of activity?
Two things. One is, Joan, where can they find you to send donations to the crew?
Okay, well, I will post on the we have two Facebook pages, Save Shollenberger and Save Shollenberger Park. So I will post, where to send money, or, how to use PayPal. Also our website, which is not real up to date, but has all the documents. If you ever want to go into the history, it's all there. And if you go to SaveShollenberger.com, you will see a donation, button, which you can donate. We are under the umbrella of the OWL Foundation. So, checks or whatever get written to O.W.L. They are our sponsors.
And then tax deductible.
They're tax deductible, if you can itemize under the new,
Right.
But, there's this other thing that my accountant keeps telling me to create some sort of charitable account, and then you can put money aside and then you can deduct things. I don't know. Talk to your accountant. It's tax time. If you want to make, if those of us who don't have foundations, some people, we have wonderful supporters who actually have foundations and have sent us money. But if you're just a person who used to get a deduction because you wrote, some checks, you can talk to your accountant. There's a way you can still get some tax benefit without itemizing. So you have to.
One way is Petaluma Wetlands Alliance is a 501c. We are tax deductible.
Yep.
So, and what I'm hoping to do is we'll go to our board and maybe talk at our next board meeting about doing some matching funds. If anybody in this crew would like to match
Sweet.
funds that we may be
Wow,
able to raise.
thank you.
We'll talk about that at our next board meeting. And so that's another way of doing it, of sending it directly to PWA, and we'll make sure it goes into your hands that way.
Thank you.
And as Nora was saying, letter writing, stay ready, because when we have to write the letters, I send out a call. And it's like amazing. One time we sent out a call, and within a week we had over 300 letters, and it's just wonderful. So, you know, and it's so much fun to like work together with other like-minded people and make a difference. So we just, you know, we just have to all band together and we will stop them.
I want to make a pitch for the Bill Cordham bench that I'm sure most of you are aware of, because the wood is beginning to deteriorate, like all the wood
Okay.
out there. For the benches, they've now been replaced. Most of them, most of the benches have been replaced with fiberglass. And I think that's something that needs to be looked into for Bill's bench.
Oh, you know, that bench was donated by
By Bug.
Bug at Heritage Salvage, and that is old growth redwood. And I was out there looking at it also, and the wonderful people there, when I call them, they send out, you know, volunteers who put teak oil on it and rub it in. So I
Look, the way
will.
it is supposed to be, like, I've heard the same thing. And I've redone, I'm the one that actually did all the benches.
Ah!
So I've repaired all the benches myself and my
Thank you.
team. And still working on it. There's a couple that need replacing now, and we're trying to work and get some new benches out there. There's a brand new one out there. They're trimming the fire. There's a whole program out there. So stay tuned to this new program that's coming from the city. I'm trying to work with Cindy Chong, our Parks Department, for that particular purpose, Memorial. We also have an amphitheater that's going to go in, and there's some possibilities of getting your name on a memorial bench part of the amphitheater. That'll go in hopefully this spring. I'm working with engineers on that one there, along with a new kiosk over at Adobe Creek. The kiosk that was broken by the dredgers is going to get replaced eventually. I'm trying to work with them. I have 2 videos now about dredging, that one with the interview with the mayor and another one with the engineer that we're still finishing up, that will get on the web here real soon. So, yeah, lots of things are going on.
Did you do the bench that was recently featured in the Argus?
No, that's a brand new bench that just got produced and constructed out there. And it's the new fiberglass benches system.
Yeah, that's the one that also was a welcome for everyone to sit there and share in the experience. The couple that donated it that recently moved to Petaluma and realized how great the community was. It's a great article. But that was your bench too?
No, that's the city. It goes through the city system, and because of the amount of donation I guess they got from it, the extra special cement platform was put in, and a brand new style bench was put in, but it's all fiberglass, 50-year rating on it.
Yeah, that's a
really nice bench.
Unless there are any other questions, I really want to thank PWA for inviting us. As you can tell, nothing simple, nothing easy. It's been a community effort all the way through, between the folks like you in town and out of town, and our consultants and our attorneys. It's been a remarkable job. It is our CEQA attorney said it is just amazing that after 17 years they're still at it.
Well, I want to thank both Joan and David, because I try to walk Shollenberger every day, and every day I thank you for your activities.
Thank you,
as I'm circling around there, and then especially now it's getting a little tense with this prospect of the dredging coming. I mean, not the dredging, but the goofy Dutra. So that's a little scary.
And I thank you for your longtime support. This keeps us going.
Yeah.
Excellent. There's one last question about the Ramsar, and maybe we can do a little bit more advertising that we are a Ramsar. Actually, we were fully nominated for the Ramsar site. I'm not sure if legally we are all the way to the full Ramsar site or not. But I think
John, if you could find out if that has ever been made final, and regardless of the status, whether it's nominated or nominated and approved, it would be great to send out a map, some description to all of the resource agencies, as high up as you can have connections so that they know this is on their radar, that Petaluma Marsh is something really important.
Mhm.
Okay, good. Thank you. Okay, is any last comments anybody would like to make?
Just if you go out there now, you'll see lots of American coots.
Yeah, yeah. They're always there, aren't they? Yeah. Yes.
And we'll wrap up sentence here.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much to Joan and David. You guys know
Thank you.
everything. I was really impressed.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
I was impressed with the whole program that you guys.
I'm
figured out.
glad we informed you, but didn't overwhelm you because, you know, we're obsessed with this.
Certain obsessions are worthwhile.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you, John, for inviting us.
Yeah.
very much.
Thanks,
Yeah.
All right,
thanks
everybody,
everyone.
stay safe and healthy.
All right.
Thank you.
See you
Bye-bye,
at
everybody.
Shollenberger. See you at Shollenberger.
Great work.
Bye.
Be out there on the walk.
Exactly.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.